The Hazari warships tore through hyperspace, galaxies blurring past viewports, a predatory glint in the crew's eyes as they closed in on their prey. These destroyers had ravaged countless worlds, extinguishing civilizations like insignificant sparks across the cosmos. But the remote human colony of Nova Prime would prove an unexpected challenge. As the Hazari emerged above the blue-green world, even battle-hardened soldiers paused at the breathtaking sight, sun glinting off virgin oceans and verdant continents. Their hesitation was brief. With practiced efficiency, the warships took up bombardment positions while troop carriers launched toward the surface, disgorging hordes of shock troops to storm humanity's fragile outposts. On the bridge of the dreadnought Ravager, Supreme Commander Galen watched the initial assault with a satisfied smirk. Plumes of smoke already darkened the skies, scattered resistance from the meager human defenses, folding quickly before the Hazari onslaught. Another species to subjugate or exterminate, it mattered little which. Then the unthinkable happened. Intercepted comms erupted with panicked Hazari voices. The humans were counterattacking ferociously, despite insurmountable odds. Galen's brow furrowed as casualty reports flooded in. Entire assault teams obliterated, landing zones recaptured. The humans fought like demons. No, like warriors possessed of singular purpose, to repel the invaders, whatever the cost. At the heart of this unprecedented resistance stood Colonel Gary Coleman, grizzled defender of Nova Prime. Jaw set and eyes cold as vacuum, he led his troops in desperate battle, an immovable bulwark against the Hazari tide. If they were to be humanity's first and last line of defense, so be it. Coleman would make the enemy pay dearly for every inch of human soil. This fight wasn't just about one remote colony. It was about mankind's very right to exist among the stars. And exist they would. As the siege of Nova Prime dragged on, Colonel Gary Coleman orchestrated a relentless campaign of guerrilla strikes against the Hazari invaders. His hardened troops melted into the rugged wilderness, emerging to ambush enemy patrols and supply convoys before vanishing like ghosts. The Hazari, used to the rigid discipline of conquest, found themselves flummoxed by this elusive new foe. Supreme Commander Galen seethed as reports of Coleman's hit-and-run attacks flooded in. Entire depots razed, precious material destroyed, morale among the rank-and-file wavering. This single human had become a thorn in his side, a maddening itch that demanded to be scratched. Galen dispatched his most ruthless hunters to track Coleman down and end his meddlesome existence. The kill teams struck with brutal efficiency, hounding the human resistance at every turn. Firefights erupted in the thorny underbrush and shattered urban ruins. Hazari plasma fire met by the bark of human assault rifles. Coleman's troops suffered grievous losses, but somehow he always managed to slip the net, leaving only frustration and Hazari dead in his wake. Light years away, the Terran Defense Force marshaled for war. News of the invasion had reached Earth, and humanity reacted with grim purpose. If the Hazari sought to snuff out human life among the stars, they would learn the depths of mankind's tenacity to endure. Admiral Hayato Yamamoto, a legend in the TDF, assembled a mighty relief fleet to break the siege of Nova Prime. At its vanguard stood the TDS Adamant, a sleek battlecruiser dripping with the most advanced human weaponry. On Nova Prime, Coleman knew his guerrilla tactics could only delay the inevitable. The Hazari still held the orbitals, and their superior numbers would eventually grind the human resistance to dust. In a high-stakes endeavor, Coleman led a hand-picked team on a daring mission to infiltrate the Ravager and sabotage its engines. They stole aboard in a captured shuttle, bluffing their way past checkpoints with forged IDs and cool nerves. Alarm klaxons blared as Coleman's commandos rampaged through the Ravager's decks, planting explosives and cutting down Hazari crew. The ship's power flickered and died as the charges detonated, engines sputtering out. But as Coleman turned to make his escape, he found himself face to face with Galen and his elite guard. The battle was short and savage. Coleman's men hurled themselves at the Hazari with suicidal fervor, buying time for their colonel to make a break for the shuttle bay. But Galen was faster. A stun bolt took Coleman in the back, and he crumpled to the deck. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Galen's triumphant sneer. Coleman awoke to agony, his body racked by untold tortures. Galen loomed over him, eyes glittering with malice. The human had proven a worthy foe, and now Galen offered him an ironic choice: submit to the will of the Hazari and live out his days as a thrall, or die a slow, excruciating death as an example to all who would defy the Empire. Coleman, bloody and broken, merely laughed in his tormentor's face. But as Galen focused on breaking the human kernel, he failed to detect the danger hurtling toward him. Admiral Yamamoto's fleet translated into the Nova Prime system, guns hot and missiles primed. The Adamant and its escorts tore into the Hazari blockade, railguns and plasma lances shredding enemy ships without difficulty. Galen rushed to the Ravager's bridge, barking orders to repel the boarders. But with the ship's engines crippled by Coleman's sabotage, they could only watch helplessly as the human fleet closed in. Terran strike craft dueled with Hazari interceptors, while boarding shuttles clawed their way through the roiling battle. Amidst the chaos, a covert ops team, led by Major Elena Ivanova, Yamamoto's protege, infiltrated the ravaged Ravager. They found Coleman in a cell, battered and bloody, but with the fire of defiance still burning in his eyes. As they spirited him away, Ivanova planted a series of demolition charges in critical systems throughout the ship. The Adamant smashed through the last Hazari ships, its dropships descending on Nova Prime to evacuate the surviving colonists. In space, the battle turned into a rout, as the outmatched Hazari crumbled before the resurgent humans. On the Ravager's bridge, Galen could only watch in disbelief as explosions chained through his crippled ship, secondary detonations ripping through decks and bulkheads. Snarling a curse, he ordered a full retreat. Battered and bloodied, the Hazari limped away from Nova Prime, their first taste of defeat in centuries of bitter pill to swallow. Galen brooded on the bridge, already plotting his revenge against the upstart humans who had defied him. On the surface, Coleman and Yamamoto clasped hands amidst the ruins, both keenly aware that this victory, though hard-won, was only the beginning. Nova Prime had held, but the Hazari would be back, and next time they would not underestimate humanity's unbreakable spirit to survive. The war had only begun, and mankind would need heroes like Coleman and Yamamoto if it was to prevail. The Hazari fleet limped away from Nova Prime, a ragged collection of battered warships nursing their wounds and their pride. Supreme Commander Galen paced the bridge of the Ravager, his heart made and eyes burning with nearly unleashed fury. The taste of defeat was bitter ash in his mouth. "Supreme Commander," Captain Marta Valeris approached, her voice low and urgent. "We must regroup. Our forces are scattered and morale is—" Galen whirled on her. "Morale? These insects dare to challenge us. We are Hazari, conquerors of 1,000 worlds." Marta met his gaze unflinchingly. "Then let us prove it. Not here, not against this colony. We strike at the heart." Understanding dawned in Galen's eyes. "Earth?" "Yes," Marta nodded, a predatory smile curving her lips. "Crush their homeworld and watch their spirit crumble." Galen's fingers danced over a holo display, battle plans already forming. "Rally the Armada. We'll show these humans the price of defiance." On Earth, the celebrations of Nova Prime's salvation were cut brutally short. General Hiroshi Nakamura stood before a sea of grim faces in the Terran Defense Forces war room. "The Hazari are coming," he announced, his voice iron, "and this time, they're coming for us all." Colonel Gary Coleman, still bearing the marks of Galen's hospitality, pushed himself to his feet. "Then we'll be ready for them," he growled. "I've seen how they fight, how they think. We can use that." As Earth's defenses mobilized, Major Elena Ivanova led her strike team through the cramped corridors of a Hazari resupply station. Sweat beaded on her brow as she placed the last demolition charge. 30 seconds, she hissed into her comm. "Move!" The station erupted in a silent blossom of fire, debris spinning away into the void. Ivanova allowed herself a moment of savage satisfaction before searing pain lanced through her side. She looked down to see her suit breach, blood already fogging the faceplate. "Major!" a panicked voice in her ear. "We're cut off!" Ivanova gritted her teeth, willing herself to focus through the haze of agony. Alternate route. Section 7B. She stumbled, vision blurring. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was Admiral Yamamoto's face, etched with worry as he hauled her into a waiting shuttle. In the war room, tension crackled like ozone. General Nakamura's eyes were hard as he unveiled the weapon that might be Earth's salvation or damnation. The singularity bomb, he intoned, untested, unstable, but our best hope. Admiral Yamamoto stepped forward. I'll take it to them. Coleman's protest died on his lips as he saw the drive in Yamamoto's eyes. This was a suicide mission, and they both knew it. The adamant translated into real space amidst the Hazari Armada, weapons already blazing. For a heartbeat, Yamamoto allowed himself to hope. Then alarms screamed as stealth drones swarmed his ships like angry wasps. "Abandon ship!" he roared, even as his fingers flew over the helm controls. The adamant shuddered, trailing escape pods like so much confetti. Yamamoto's world narrowed to a single point of light on his console. One last duty. One final service to Earth and all mankind. He pressed the button. Light bloomed, reality twisted, and a hungry void yawned where Hazari ships had been moments before. Galen watched in horror as a third of his fleet vanished into the swirling maw of the singularity. "Supreme Commander," Marta's voice shook, "we must withdraw. Now." For once, Galen did not argue. On Earth, the news of Yamamoto's sacrifice hit like a physical blow. Coleman stared at the tactical display, fists clenched at his sides. In the infirmary, Ivanova wept silently for her lost mentor. But there was no time for grief. The battered Hazari fleet regrouped, hunger for vengeance overriding caution. Earth's defenders steeled themselves for the coming storm, knowing that everything, their world, their species, their very future among the stars, hung in the balance. The war room fell silent as General Nakamura's plan unfolded on the tactical display. Major Elena Ivanova studied the holographic representation of the Ravager, her eyes tracing potential entry points and choke points. "It's a bold strategy," Colonel Gary Coleman rasped, his voice still raw from Galen's interrogation. "But capturing Galen won't be enough. The Hazari are fanatics." Ivanova met his gaze. "Then we'll make an example of him. Show the galaxy their supreme commander bleeds like anyone else." As she assembled her strike team, Ivanova couldn't shake the memory of Admiral Yamamoto's sacrifice. The singularity bomb had bought them time, but at a terrible cost. She vowed to make it count. Sergeant Alejandro Kozak, grizzled and battle-scarred, fell in beside her. "Just like old times, eh, Major?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Let's hope this goes better than Proxima Centauri." Lieutenant Jake Farrell's voice crackled over the comm as they boarded the stealth shuttle. "Ion storm's kicking up. Should give us the cover we need, but it'll be a rough ride." Dr. Maya Vishnu, the team's xenolinguist, gripped her seat as turbulence rattled the small craft. "I hope your flying is as good as they say, Lieutenant." Farrell's answer was lost in the roar of engines as they launched into the maelstrom. Lightning danced across the viewports, painting everything in stark relief. Ivanova's fingers tightened on her rifle as the shuttle bucked and wove through the Ravager's point defense grid. A bone-jarring impact signaled their less-than-gentle docking. Kozak was first through the airlock, his weapon already spitting death at the surprised Hazari crew. Ivanova followed, her own rifle barking staccato bursts. They fought their way through twisting corridors, the ship's metallic walls soon slick with alien blood. Dr. Vishnu paused at a computer terminal, her fingers flying over alien glyphs. "Major," she called, "I'm detecting widespread communications chatter. It seems there's dissent in the ranks." Ivanova nodded grimly. "Good, let's add fuel to that fire." As they neared Galen's command center, resistance stiffened. Plasma bolts sizzled past Ivanova's head, leaving scorch marks on the bulkhead. She heard Kozak grunt in pain but couldn't spare a glance back. The doors to Galen's sanctum blew inward under a shaped charge. Through the smoke, Ivanova saw the Hazari commander, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You dare?" Galen snarled, hurling himself at the humans with inhuman speed. What followed was a brutal dance of fists and knives. Ivanova felt her ribs crack under a vicious blow, but she gave as good as she got. A swift kick sent Galen's weapon skittering across the deck. "Surrender," Ivanova growled, her rifle trained on Galen's head. The Hazari's laugh was like grinding glass. "Never." Movement blurred at the edge of her vision. Kozak shouted a warning, then Ivanova felt herself shoved roughly aside. Plasma fire filled the air where she'd been standing a heartbeat before. When the chaos subsided, Galen lay unconscious at her feet, but the victory felt hollow as Ivanova knelt beside Kozak's fallen form. "Finish it," the sergeant wheezed, blood bubbling at his lips. "Make it count." Ivanova allowed herself one moment of grief before the professional mask slammed back into place. They had a mission to complete. As they fought their way back to the extraction point, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Ravager shuddered, internal explosions tearing through its superstructure. "My earlier handiwork," Ivanova explained grimly as they raced for the shuttle. "Looks like the bills come due." They barely cleared the disintegrating flagship before it vanished in a spectacular fireball. Through the comm, they heard the panic spreading through the Hazari fleet as word of Galen's capture spread. Ivanova watched the Hazari armada fracture, some ships fleeing, while others turned their guns on former allies. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, all she felt was a bone-deep weariness. As Earth's battered defenders regrouped, reports flooded in of uprisings throughout Hazari space. The chains were breaking, but Ivanova knew the real work was just beginning. The Hazari were wounded, not defeated, and a cornered enemy was often the most dangerous of all. The shockwaves of Galen's capture rippled through the Hazari Empire like a seismic tremor. General Nakamura seized the moment, his voice crackling with urgency as he addressed the combined Terran fleets. "All ships, this is General Nakamura. The enemy is in disarray. We strike now with everything we have." Across 100 bridges, captains relayed the order. Engines flared to life as the massed armada surged forward, hungry for retribution. On Earth, Colonel Gary Coleman stood before a sprawling holographic display, his eyes darting between tactical readouts. "There," he pointed, highlighting a cluster of Hazari supply depots. "Hit them here, cut off their logistics chain." Admiral Chen nodded, relaying the targeting data to the lead elements of the assault force. Moments later, antimatter warheads blossomed against the void, vaporizing Hazari materiel in silent flashes of devastation. As the Terran offensive gathered momentum, unlikely allies joined the fray. Slaved worlds, long chafing under Hazari dominion, saw their chance and seized it. Chitinous Vrek swarms descended on Hazari outposts. Crystalline Jarak ships, their hulls glittering with refracted starlight, punched through weakened defensive lines. Major Elena Ivanova stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Retribution, her face a mask of unyielding commitment. The loss of Sergeant Kozak gnawed at her, but there was no time for grief. Not yet. "Prep for atmospheric insertion," she barked. "I want boots on Hazari Prime in 30 minutes. As her Marines readied for planetfall, Ivanova's thoughts turned to their target. Intelligence suggested Marta Valeris had seized control in the wake of Galen's capture, ruling through fear and brutality. It wouldn't be enough. The Retribution shuddered as it plunged through the upper atmosphere of the Hazari homeworld. Warning klaxons blared as point defense lasers lashed out at incoming missiles. "Evasive maneuvers," Ivanova shouted. "Get us to the drop zone." Marine-laden dropships spilled from the Retribution's launch bays, screaming towards the Hazari capital. As they descended, Ivanova saw the scars of civil war etched across the landscape. Entire city blocks lay in ruins, smoke rising from fresh impact craters. Her boots hit ferrocrete as plasma bolts sizzled overhead. Ivanova's Marines fanned out, engaging fanatical Hazari warriors in vicious close-quarters combat. "Push forward," Ivanova commanded, her rifle spitting death as she advanced. "We take the capital today." Dr. Maya Vishnu crouched behind a shattered wall, her translator working overtime as she interrogated a captured Hazari officer. "Major," she called out, "it's worse than we thought. Valeris has activated some kind of doomsday protocol. Ivanova's blood ran cold. Specifics, Doctor. What are we dealing with? Orbital platforms, Vishnu replied, her face pale, capable of sterilizing the entire planet. A deafening roar filled the air as Lieutenant Jake Farrell's fighter squadron screamed overhead, engaging Hazari air defenses. This is Farrell, his voice crackled over the comm. We've located the control bunker for those platforms. It's heavily fortified. Ivanova weighed her options, acutely aware that every second brought them closer to apocalypse. Jake, can you punch through? There was a moment of static-filled silence. Negative, Major. Not unless... Wait one. Ivanova heard the change in Farrell's voice, knew what was coming before he said it. I'm going in, Farrell announced. One-way trip. Should buy you the time you need. Jake, no, Ivanova began, but it was too late. Farrell's fighter streaked across the sky, afterburners glowing white-hot as he aimed for the heart of the Hazari defenses. Anti-aircraft fire filled the air, but he jinked and rolled, evading with preternatural skill. At the last possible moment, Farrell's fighter slammed into the control bunker. The explosion lit up the horizon, a funeral pyre for a hero. Go! Ivanova screamed, grief and rage fueling her charge. Push through! We finish this now! Her Marines surged forward, buoyed by Farrell's sacrifice. They fought street by street, building by building, clawing their way towards the shattered remnants of the control bunker. Dr. Vishnu raced to the bunker's exposed reactor core, her fingers flying over alien controls. I can trigger an overload, she shouted. It should take out the orbital platforms. Do it, Ivanova ordered, providing covering fire as Hazari troops made a last, desperate push to stop them. The reactor's whine grew to a fevered pitch. Ivanova grabbed Vishnu, bodily hauling her away as the bunker erupted in a blinding flash. The shockwave knocked them both off their feet. As the dust settled, Ivanova's comm crackled to life. Major, this is Retribution, confirming destruction of Hazari orbital platforms. I repeat, doomsday weapons neutralized. A ragged cheer went up from the surviving Marines. Ivanova allowed herself a moment of relief before refocusing on the mission at hand. We're not done, she growled. Valeris is still out there. They fought their way through the ruined capital, dispatching pockets of fanatical resistance. At last, they reached the grand throne room where Marta Valeris made her final stand. The Hazari leader lay slumped against her ornate throne, purple blood seeping from a dozen wounds. Her eyes blazed with hatred as Ivanova approached. You've won nothing, Valeris spat, her voice weak but venomous. We are eternal. We will rise again, and your precious alliances will crumble to dust. Ivanova met the dying alien's gaze unflinchingly. Maybe, but not today. As Valeris's life ebbed away, Ivanova turned to survey the devastation. The Hazari homeworld lay in ruins, its people shattered. Victory, but at what cost? Far from the still smoldering battlefields, shadowy figures congregated in hidden chambers. They spoke in hushed tones of reclamation, of vengeance, of a new leader who would restore Hazari glory and crush the upstart humans once and for all. The war was over, but a new conflict was just beginning to take shape.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.